Did you know when dealing with young people in the church, there has always been a trend with trying to keep them engaged? No matter the decade, no matter the year, that has always been the same trend. Now, in a pandemic, churches are doing all they can on social media to create and keep community. And social media just happens to be where the young people are. I would like to welcome you to the series, The Church, Young People, and Social Media. Over the next few weeks, you will witness focus groups that were held on Zoom featuring a number of great leaders and pastors in the St. Louis Metropolitan Area, as well as young people themselves. The conversation is all about the church, young people, and social media. This is part one. I want to begin by first thanking you all for literally taking your time out to sit down and talk with me. I know you all are busy, especially during a time with COVID, so much on your plate. So I'm very honored that you all accepted. And I want to give a disclaimer. My son TJ is here, so don't be surprised if you see him run up and try to get some camera time. He loves to see himself. But we're gonna go ahead and jump in. I don't want to hold you long. And if you see me look to the side, I'm looking at my laptop at the questions. But the reason why I reached out to you all, because I know you all really have a true love and a passion for God and for his people. And throughout all of you all's ministries, I could tell that you really do have a passion also for young people. So that is going to be our focus today. The topic, as you all know, it is the church, the youth, and social media. And to ensure that I'm not biased with anything, I'm going to stop there because I don't want anything that I say to reflect how you answer. So before we begin the questions, let's do an introduction. I know everyone knows each other, but this will be just for purposes when I do air this live somewhere. And also, a little house rules. If you're not speaking, be sure to have yourself on mute. Okay, and once everyone is on mute, we're gonna start off with Pastor Oh, I'm saying your name. Well, you all could just jump in and introduce yourself. And since I already said your name, Pastor Battle, you can go ahead. If you would, give your name, your title, your church, and the number of years you've been in ministry.
Well, my name is David Battle. I pastor Bread of Life Church. I've been pastoring since 2006. That puts it at 14 years.
Awesome. Thank you. Next, anyone can jump in.
Hello, everyone. I am Elder KP Hoffman. I belong to Foundation of True Church of God in Christ, and I have been in ministry for about 15 years now.
Awesome.
Hello. My name is Jerome Harris, youth pastor at Lively Stone, in ministry for 9 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerome.
I'm Larry Baylor. I serve as the senior pastor of Faith Miracle Temple. I've been pastoring the church for 30 years. I also serve as the presiding bishop of High Ground International Ministries. I've been doing that roughly 15 years. I have been in ministry 38 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Bishop. All right, next. And we're just doing introductions, Eric. I see you jump back on, so I'll let you go ahead.
Introductions. Okay, well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Charles Griffin. I attend Temple Church of Christ, where Pastor Ron Stevens is my pastor. I've been in ministry for over 25 years, working with young people, maybe 22 of those years. And I'm just excited to be here tonight.
Thank you. Happy to have you. All right, next.
Bishop Antoine Jackson, the senior pastor of the Equation Church, St. Louis, Missouri. I've been pastoring the church for 11 years. I have been in ministry for 24 years this year.
Wow. Awesome. All right. I believe we have Pastor Tanya next. You're on mute.
Got me now? Can you hear
Yes,
me now?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Tanya Brown, and I've been in ministry for over 35 years, but pastoring here with my husband. And then before then, I was youth president, youth pastor at the church I came out of in Connecticut for a season.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you. You all have so many years of experience under your belt, and combined it's even more so. I know I got the right people on tonight for our questions. So we're going to jump in. Feel free to answer the questions. If you don't have an answer for it, that's totally fine as well. I do ask, for the sake of time, that all questions, answers will be limited to 3 minutes. So we don't want to go over. There's no way that I could pull your coattail. I may have to send you a private chat if you go over. So we're gonna go ahead and begin. And the floor is open, whoever wants to dive in first. But the first question is, what does your church congregation look like? And also I'm going to combine, how has your congregation changed over the last 10 to 15 years? And the floor is open.
I'll get it started. Actually, Equation Church is a mixed generation church. I have kids church, teen church, young adult ministries, of course, then my age bracket, quote unquote, the millennials. And then I actually have some boomer generation in my church. So I have a mixed generation ministry. What has actually changed is I just a couple of years ago, I buried one of the oldest members of my church. She was 79, I believe. So I just really couldn't believe that she was a part of our church, but she's a 79-year-old lady. So I've seen my church actually get older. I've seen older families join our ministry and become a part of our church. And with them, they've brought along their kids and their teens to our church.
Wow. So, like, when I think of Equation Church, I think of just automatically youth. Like, you all got the lights and the action, but it's kind of in the sense, I'm not saying it's not youthful, but it's the older bringing in the younger.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Because we've had a lot of people that are what I would call been de-churched. They've had, either bad church experiences, or they couldn't find that mixture of an experience that was powerful, prophetic, all of quote unquote of the stuff that we call church, but still concise, and the teaching and the experience being very practical, and then the experiences not being very long. So I call it, we've found that sweet spot to be a middle ground church, where for people that want church to feel like church, but they also want that practical element of what ministry looks like, that ministers to the holistic idea of their family.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Well, our church, Deja, is roughly, I broke it down, is 5% silent generation, 50% baby boomers, 20% Gen Xers, 20% millennials, and 5% Gen Zs. The church has changed tremendously over the last 10 years, really dramatically. One, in terms of obviously the demographic breakdown. Also, it's changed in terms of how we do church. We've added a huge visual and performing arts piece to the equation. We do a lot of that. Nextly, we brought in all the younger group as key leaders in our church. In other words, they're in positions to make decisions. And obviously, when they make decisions, it changes the whole church. I mean, because I believe this, that if you look around you, and that's anybody, and everybody on your decision-making boards or decision-making teams or your age, your church is aging too much. You need to bring in new and fresh blood to help you make decisions to keep up with the generations that are behind you. So the main way our church is changing and has changed is we have decision makers that are half my age.
Wow.
Half my age. As a matter of fact, a bunch of them are less or more than half my age. So, I mean, that's the major change that are taking place at our church.
That's awesome. Thank you, Bishop.
You're welcome.
Deja, I would say at Foundation of Truth, where I'm over Ignite, we have a good group of baby boomers, and then we definitely have a good group of millennials, probably make up of Foundation of Truth. And then with Ignite, we have all the way from what we call Ignite babies, we have our millennials, we have our Generation Y, and then we have also some Generation Z as well, as far as that. And then how things change. I've been with my church for 2 years now since I just moved back. But I know now, as far as like with Ignite being in place for 2 years, that the youth are more involved. Like Apostle Baylor just said, as far as like the youth making decisions, as far as when it comes to certain things and how certain things go, the youth are definitely more involved with my church now, as far as since Ignite has came along.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. All right, let's hear from you, Eric.
I was at all the pastors talk, because all the pastors can explain about the church. But I guess, my church, I've been in the same church since I was born.
Eric, you're a little choppy.
I've been on 3 pastors. Bishop Sam, I'm a little choppy. Yeah, I've been having some signal issues. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Is it still choppy?
we hear you, but you froze. You got a nice smile on your face. It's real choppy. So what we'll do, we'll come back to you. We'll come back.
I'm sorry. That's why I'm using my phone, because my computer.
That's okay. I understand.
My computer's having issues. I'm sorry. I was basically saying I was in the same church. Okay.
Okay, we're going to come back to you. All right, let's hear from Jerome.
Am I good? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Well, I've been at the church that I'm at now. It'll be 4 years. Lively Stone, it'll be 4 years coming up in September. And, again, I'm the youth pastor there. And so I lead the Lively Kids, which is formerly known as Little Lively Stone, Lively Teens, and Live Adults. And the demographic of our church, if I was able to give a percentage, it would be about 70-30, with being 70% older generation, with all the different dimensions within those groups. I would say from your boomers to your 40s and up, and about 30% youth, which is growing because of our approach to ministry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Lively Stone is a historic church, so it's good to hear that you all's youth is growing.
Yeah, I admire the bishop's vision when as it pertains to really putting some backing and some support behind it. We have the traditional, fight, with which is real rampant in the city of St. Louis, traditional Pentecostal approach to ministry, and a lot of our methodology when it pertains to engagement doesn't necessarily look how they used to engage, and so we definitely have our work cut out for us there. But it's great that our bishop, our senior bishop, has endorsed us, and they are behind us 100%.
Awesome. That's good to hear. All right, Pastor Tanya.
I would have to say that our church is interesting because when I went to that church, I was 24 years old. So even though we had a lot of young people then, and I was a young person, what sometimes we don't realize is as you age, those people are aging too, aging with you. So we have the baby boomers, we have the Generation X. I would love to have more millennials, but I think it's the baby boomers, the Generation X, and the younger babies pretty much make up our church.
Okay. Has it changed over the years for you all?
Yes,
Like
it
what?
has. It has changed in the sense that, as I said, as the baby boomers age, you realize that they're not young people anymore either. And you try to get them to realize they're not young people anymore either. So it's changed in that sense. And we've done we do a lot of outreach to kids through our Jenga program. But where we are in Alton, one of the reasons why we've seen such changes and we have to constantly go after that particular age group is because the city is so dynamic. It changes. And I've heard other pastors in this city say that as well. So I think the city that you're in affects that to a degree. So yes, we have seen changes in where, as the children start getting older, it's not as many even in the city in some of the areas that we're in. So that has certainly reflected in our church.
That's a good point. A very good point. Let me get Pastor Battle first before I ask the next question. But after Pastor Battle, I would like for you all to elaborate where your church is located. Okay, Pastor Battle.
Okay, as far as the question that you're asking, I like the answer that Bishop Jackson gave, and that is a mixed generational church, of which we are a mixed generational church. And the reason I like that phrase is simply because in Scripture, we know that the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. And certainly the interest is that all souls, no matter what their age is, are in need of God's salvation. I don't focus on any particular group because of age. I focus on drawing the souls of people, no matter who they are. And I'm sure that my colleagues in the gospel do the same thing. Their interest is the souls of people. But in direct answer to the question, I'd have to utilize the answer that Jackson gave, and that was a mixed generational church. It really has not changed in 15 years. We've had deaths, certainly, of some of our older members. We've certainly have had the babies born, and we've had new members come in of various ages, which is good. And the third part of that question, I know it wasn't part of the initial question you asked, but the third part is asking, have you noticed a difference in your congregation? I guess we all have, and that's pretty much because of the society that we live in. There are differences, but bottom line, again, I focus on addressing the salvational needs of soul. The soul is what's important. So regarding the differences, you learn to flow with whatever those differences are, with the hope and the intent that you will certainly get to the soul that needs salvation. And you utilize whomever God has saved. I don't care if they're a little bitty child, 8, 9 years old. God saves them. You put them to work. Whether they're 90 years old and they want to work, they can't work. You put them to work in the Lord.
Thank you.
And to add, the church is located in the old North St. Louis neighborhood, which is off of Highway 70 and St. Louis Avenue.
Thank you. All right. Oh, Eric. We're going to wait on Eric to come in. We pray he has good connection. Okay, and while we're waiting, I'll go ahead and let everyone know where your churches are located.
Foundation of Truth in Cahokia, Illinois.
We're located 4032 North 22nd Street at Angelica North City.
Lively Stones is located 4015 St. Louis Avenue, in the Ville community, North City.
Okay.
Faith Miracle Temple is located at 870 Pershaw Road, St. Louis, Missouri 63137. We're off of Highway 270 and Lilac.
Is that I don't think that was everybody.
I told you mine already in Alton, Illinois, so I don't know if you're waiting on me.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, no, ma'am. You kicked it off. You made a good point saying, where your city is, that will tell you, if you're able to reach youth, if there's young people in those cities. So thank you for kicking that off. And Eric, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to imply that there weren't young people in the city, but the city is so dynamic in the sense of it changes so often as far as people that live here move out. They tore down probably about 3 or 4 project areas over the last 10 years, some where we got some of our heaviest groups of kids from. So
Wow.
Those were actually torn down and the kids were dispersed. So a lot of the children who were in our program at that time were actually dispersed. But what we have found, they were like 7 or 8 years old when they were dispersed. And some of them, after they got to be 18, moved out of the area. One in particular was living in Kentucky. But once they got grown enough, we've had several to actually come back.
That's awesome.
But they're not kids.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. I love it. And that's what we're going to get to later on. Did everyone give their church location? No? Okay, Eric, it looks like you have good connection now, so I'll go ahead and let you answer the question. Let me know if you need for me to repeat it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, good. All right, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Basically, what does your church congregation look like?
Oh, okay. Well, like I was saying earlier, I've been in the same church since I was born, under 3 pastors, and to me, it's pretty much looked the same way since 1980. I mean, some things have changed, people have changed, but we're still ministering to the same age groups that we minister to all my life since I've been there. I mean, we have our older saints, and I don't know all of the technical terms of the generations and things of that nature, but I do recognize, the different groups that we have, and we try to appeal to every last one of them to try to find ministries that will accommodate each group. But I think to me, it's pretty much the same. We haven't brought in a lot of technology. Pastor Stevens is really getting new with us now, to bring in a lot of technology and causing us to move forward. But me growing up from the 80s on up, our church didn't really have a lot of technology. We started television ministry in '93, but that kind of got me excited. But that was like the first group of technology I think our church really had was probably back in that era.
Wow. So you're saying your church congregation hasn't changed. For those who don't know what temple looks like, how would you describe that? And you don't have to give technical names.
Okay. Well, I think more so now it's more temporary. Back in the day, it was more traditional. But I think now it's more temporary, and I feel like now we're trying to bring some of our traditionalisms back. When you look at things like hymns, just because of the fact that those mean so much to us, those words that we sing in hymns, and a lot of times our praise teams are not singing hymns anymore; they're singing a lot of contemporary music, and that's what we've been the last maybe 4 or 5 years. But I see us now trying to go back to remember, those things that I grew up on, which were hymns.
Now, as far as the groups that are represented, would you just give us, like, you can make up a number. What would be the percentage of your church, young people and older people?
We might have maybe 75% of older and 25% younger.
Okay, 75. Thank you. And where is your church located?
Church located in the city off of Jefferson near Cass, 2741 Dayton Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63106.
Awesome. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next question. What is your perspective on the adoption of digital media for churches? How would you all say that churches have adapted to digital media?
If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and jump in.
Okay.
I believe that we should utilize everything that is at our disposal for the purpose of reaching people, no matter where they are. I think that all the pastors in particular will agree with me that there are people that have connected with your church that aren't even from your area. Matter of fact, they're in other parts of the country, whether it be the Eastern time zone, Mountain time zone, or Pacific time zone, even in other parts of the world. So by taking advantage of digital media, we are actually doing what the gospel wants us to do, and that's to go into all the world and reach everybody. So I think churches should adapt, one, if they haven't adapted, and I think they should adapt to whatever their financial means will allow them to, and grow exponentially as the changes occur. Again, someone mentioned the television ministry, or even go back radio ministry. I remember when radio ministry was the big thing. Going back to Lively Stone, people couldn't wait for the Lively Stone broadcast on the radio and then television. But now, any church anywhere can broadcast anytime. It can be 2:00 in the morning. You get broadcast, and you're going to reach somebody because somebody's either up within the time zone you're in, or somebody, you've hit a time zone where someone would normally be looking at social media or whatever it may be.
Good points. And even me as a little girl, I remember going to the Lively Stone broadcast, and it was big back then. I was a little girl back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So times have most definitely changed. I'll be 29 this year.
Oh, I've got socks that old.
Anyone else?
Well, I think churches now, especially during this pandemic, a lot of churches have had no choice but to adapt to social media, to using Zoom, and all those things. You got pastors now, if they can't afford a camera, they may be upgrading their, their iPhone so they can have 3 cameras so they have a clear picture. You got people, buying the green sheets for their, background screens and things like that. So I think, during this time, it has forced a lot of ministries to adapt to it. But I think a lot of times some ministries did not adapt to it. And I can just speak from my experience as far as growing up in an old school apostolic church. If we didn't understand it, we kind of demonized it. What I'm saying? That's not allowed. Is that of God? And things of that nature. So I think now with what's going on is pulling a lot of pastors out of that. As far as with that, because a lot of times, a lot of old school people, they'll say, well, God is my teacher. He'll teach me this. And sometimes they talk against as far as, learning new things and doing new things, as far as when it comes to things. So I think the church now is adapting. Do I think some churches, some of us were behind? Yes, because now it's like we're scrambling, trying to get caught up with it now and trying to perfect the media ministry that we do have now, because we demonized it at first. Now all of a sudden, this is of God. We got to reach the people when, all along, we should have been reaching the people all over the world.
Come on.
Right.
I kind of agree with Brother Hoffman. I think that we didn't take the advantage of the opportunity when these things presented itself. Although the business world has been on top of technology forever, the church has been that type of thing where we kind of like delayed in that particular area. We kind of put more emphasis on other areas when it came to technology. Those are just things that most churches don't pay attention to. There are some pastors that do pay attention to it. They'll upgrade a sound system. They'll upgrade a video system. But the important thing about it is that many of us didn't really have that particular image for us. Our image was just come to church. And if you didn't get it at church, you didn't get it. You didn't get it at all. But now we're in a place now where we have to go into all the world, and we have to do whatever means it takes to reach that particular world. Our generations now, they're nothing but technology. So if you're going to say, come to my church house and sit and listen to me, then you're probably not going to reach them, but you're going to have to use the graphics. You're going to have to use the technology that it takes to reach them and to catch their attention so they can actually get this word that they actually need to hear.
And
So true.
Deja, if I can add one more thing, when Eric mentioned about the business world, and like with me working in the restaurant industry, and as far as with businesses are always looking at how can we make more money, versus like sometimes with the church, instead of looking at how can we bring in more souls, they don't have that business model. Like the business I'm in now, like we're running short, there's a shortage on beef, so like we're rolling commercials that's going to focus more on chicken, because if people see more of that, that's what they're going to come and like, oh, that's what I want. Let me go stop by here and buy this. So I think a lot of times the church didn't adapt to that as far as with souls. And then a lot of times, of course, there's a business side to church, there's pastors on here. So, they didn't adapt to that and think of let us focus on this group of people, not even a group of people, let's just get the word out there, because the more people we drive in, then there's more funds for the church, there's more resources for the church, because you never know who's going to join your church, lawyers, doctors, people in television. So I think that, we were behind on that as well, because we just didn't have that business mind, like in business. So.
Deja, can I chime in on the question? Personally, I don't believe that we should have had to adapt to it. Our culture and a lot of our churches are very reactionary, and they're not on the cusp of change. I think that that rather than adapting to a new normal or culture, we should have just been pivoting to that culture. It's easy to pivot somewhere where you've been planted versus adapting to something that you really don't have any knowledge of. And so you see a lot of churches adapting, but they don't have the wherewithal and the experience in using that platform of engagement. And so whereas, yes, I agree that a lot of us has adapted, but you have some churches like Bishop Bayless Church and Bishop Jackson's church, who's had that presence before COVID, and they just pivoted to a more excellent virtual stream.
That's awesome feedback. And I want the conversation to keep going, so feel free to chime in whenever you all want to jump in.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in on what Jerome was saying, man. He's actually right. When COVID hit, we didn't have to change anything. We were already on all the social media platforms. Our church was designed not to be in the church building. We have 28 pastors here. So we haven't had to do anything, just make a few little pivots, and that's about it. I mean, the question that you sent me, Deja, was why do I think that the church didn't adapt to the changing times and digital media compared to the business? Well, first of all, I think Jerome was spot on with it. A lot of times, and somebody else mentioned this, if the church doesn't understand something and it's new, we have a tendency, as he mentioned, to demonize it. Sometimes we're fearful of things. And secondly, being in the church, especially the Afro-American church, all my life, we're just slow people. We're slow to move forward. We wait, we're reactionary, as Jerome said. I'll say this, a lot of the trendy things that we do, I didn't get them from Afro-Americans. Some of the stuff that I'm learning now doesn't come from a lot of Afro-American presenters. I mean, being a part of a church for now, roughly 50 years, I've seen the difference in just being schooled and taught and engaged by Afro-Americans versus stepping out and gaining information from all kinds of different races, creeds, and colors. And I believe that's the way the body of Christ is supposed to work. Colors shouldn't box us in. A lot of stuff that, man, I'm telling you, in the last, I'll say this and quit, in the last roughly 3 years, I've tapped in some information that's revolutionized our church in every way. Right now, even through social media, we're growing in the midst of the pandemic. Our church is growing, man, in the midst of this. I mean, it's just crazy. And not only in numbers, but in other ways as well. So we have to, really take the blinders off, and whoever can help you, let them help you. I mean, we know, those of us here mostly are apostolics, and we understand the doctrine. We'll never change that. But just because somebody doesn't embrace our doctrine doesn't mean that they can help us in other ways. So I think that's a major part of it. I'll close with this. In Luke 16:8, the B clause, I'll read it from the easy read version of the Bible. It says, worldly people are smarter in their business with each other than spiritual people are. That's very true. The King James says the children of darkness are in that generation wiser than the children of light. You hit it on the head, man, when you mentioned that they are after money. We should be after souls like they're after money. And I don't think that's the case with most of the preachers I deal with.
Very good, Bishop. Very good. And me, coming out of FMT, everything Bishop said is most definitely true. And I want to elaborate on how you said, like, you basically structure Faith Miracle Temple to operate. You built the church for not being there. You have the pastors, you were already on social media. This pandemic surprised everybody. So I do say kudos to all those who were prepared. And our goal is to help people get prepared, who I will hope that even after this pandemic, the social streams will continue. Wasn't that a great conversation? This is just part 1, so make sure you be back for part 2. But the conversation doesn't end just because this video is over. Join us in the comments. Let's continue on. Let me hear your input on the church, young people, and social media.